It's hotter than a rat in an electric blanket in here,
Neil Perkins said, raising his voice over the roar of the helicopter rotors.
You would think that's hot, you sick.
Vera Lemus said, waggling her eyebrows at Perkins. Perkins took the bait, leaning over to me to leer at Lemus with lecherous green eyes.
There's nothing hotter than a rat. You ever seen one? Ooh, boy, does it get the blood flowing.
The helicopter banked, causing Perkins to fall into me. I bucked him off.
Whoa, sorry, Slaughter,
Perkins said.
Didn't mean to get into your personal space. You can sit on my lap if you want,
I said, making a joke out of my discomfort.
but all this talk about rat has me a little excited.
Vera and Perkins laughed. Across from me, Manny Cantu and Cedric Madrigal smiled and shook their heads. The rest of our squad sat near the back of the chopper, having their own conversations, joking around, trying to one-up each other. Sergeant Fong sat among them, staring out one of the porthole windows at the thick jungle canopy below. Normally, Fong was one to come out on top as far as sick jokes, but it seemed he wasn't in a joking mood. Knowing that he'd been the only one briefed on our mission didn't bode well for us. One reason our Asian American sergeant was so good at one-upping the rest of us was because of his unreadable face. I never agreed to play poker with the guy because he always looked like a slab of stone sitting there at the card table, copper eyes taking in everything and revealing nothing. Now, his normally stoic demeanor was cracked with fear. Or maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe it was a form of wishful thinking because I didn't have the normal pre-mission jitters, which was strange. While Perkins and Lemus kept at it, I shifted in my seat and looked out the window at the jungle below. We were all dressed ready for battle, sweating under our gear in the humid air. We held our rifles between our legs and wore our backpacks and helmets and vests. All Sarge had told us when we lifted off from the carrier somewhere in the southern Atlantic was to be ready for anything.
Hey, Sarge,
Cantu called.
how come we're going to the jungle, but we're not wearing jungle BDUs?
This question broke Fong out of his trance, and he glanced at Cantu, whose earnest face and perpetual smile had turned him into the squad's little brother, the one everyone gave a hard time but would protect with their lives with no hesitation.
You'll see, Cantu.
Fong called back.
Just calm your ass down over there, will you? Hey, I'm calm.
Cantu said.
I'm cool as a fucking cucumber.
As soon as the words left his mouth, the helicopter dove nose first toward the canopy below. Some kind of emergency alarm erupted from the cockpit, and all my squad mates stiffened in fear. Everyone but me, anyway. I experienced an adrenalized glee as I glanced around the cabin at the expressions of fear on my squad mates' faces. Time seemed to slow as my mind lurched with impossible speed toward possible outcomes. I'd always figured I would die on a mission, fighting an unlikable lizard, a freaky monster, or a cult, but a helicopter crash would do just as well. Anything was better than a slow, torturous death in a hospital bed. I thought briefly of what a shame it would be for my squad mates to die, but there was nothing I could do about it. I was no pilot. The helicopter hurtled toward the jungle, the canopy getting so close I could tell individual leaves apart. With one hand, I kept hold of my rifle. With the other, I grabbed Perkins by the top of his vest, pulled his face toward my own, and I laughed at him. Even as I was doing it, some part of me wondered why, but I could not stop myself. The helicopter suddenly straightened out, but it wasn't over. We were still going down, just not as fast, and not nose first. The tail started whipping back and forth as the pilot's voice came over the intercom system.
Prepare for impact.
I still had hold of Perkins, and my scream laugh had turned into a full-fledged cackle, sounding foreign even to my own ears. The forest canopy rose to meet us. The helicopter smashed into it belly first, producing a cacophony of snapping branches and scraping metal. The aircraft jerked as the tail rotor hit a tree. Then the helicopter tilted sideways, rotors snapping through tree branches as it fell. Had we not all been strapped in, we would have been thrown all over the cabin. As it was, We could do nothing but hold tight to our harnesses as the helicopter jerked and twisted its way down through the trees toward the jungle floor. Windows shattered, people screamed. The helicopter tilted back the other way, then it nosed down a moment before we struck the ground. All of us were jerked sideways with the impact, but there was no time to ruminate on any injuries, because the tail then fell, the rear of the aircraft smashing unevenly into the ground. My crazed laughter only died down when I realized by the looks on my squad mates' faces that I was still doing it. Manny Cantu and Cedric Madrigal across the way glanced warily at me, disgust flitting across their faces.
Holy shit,
I said, feeling as if I had to fill the silence I'd recently created by ceasing my laughter.
Everyone okay? Somebody help me!
Fong said from the back of the aircraft. I leaned forward so I could see past Lemus and looked that way. A branch had come through a window and sliced open Sean Culver's throat. He and Fong both had their hands around the wound, but Culver's shirt was dark with blood and his face was pale. Everyone started moving, unstrapping themselves from their seats and getting their basic first aid kits from their packs. Thinking that they had Culver under control, I got up and moved to the cockpit door, pulling it open and looking at the two pilots.
Jesus,
I said. The pilot in the right-hand seat was dead, a large branch sticking through the broken windshield and into his chest. The co-pilot on my left was still alive, but he'd hit his head somehow and was delirious.
Can you walk?
I asked him. He just looked up at me with swimming eyes and said,
What happened? Where are you hurt?
I asked. I could see an abrasion on his head where he'd struck something, but that was it.
My head.
He said after a moment.
And my leg.
I shifted, stepping as far into the crumpled cockpit as I could. The guy's leg was broken, all right. Some metal had smashed inward and pinned his left lower leg against his seat, breaking it in the process. It didn't look too good. Shit, I thought. There was no way we could hike out of here and get to an exfil place. It would be nearly impossible for anyone to pick us up in the middle of this thick jungle.
Just sit tight,
I said.
Don't try to move yet. We'll get you sorted soon.
I peered out the windshield at the jungle, my eyes glancing over the strange roots that coated the jungle floor. They were the color and texture of old concrete, which was strange, but I didn't think much more of it. The helicopter shifted again from our movement. I turned around to see that they had Culver on the floor, working to slow the bleeding. It didn't look promising. My jaw clenched as I watched them work on young Culver. I liked the guy. I didn't want him to die. Then again, there wasn't much I could do about it now. The helicopter shifted again, a part of the back ceiling crushing down a few inches. All eyes shifted to that area. It was as if a tree or a large branch had fallen onto the aircraft, but I hadn't heard any impact. Fong looked up at the crushed-in portion, which was almost directly over him and Culver.
Carrington, Tirado, and Schuster, go outside and see what the hell that was. Create a perimeter. Lemus, radio for help.
Fong tossed Lemus the radio as the three moved to the door. I watched them open it and step out among the strange concrete-looking roots that snaked all over the ground. Lemus spoke into the radio, drawing my attention. A moment later, I whipped my head back to the door as someone shouted from outside. At the same instant, the ceiling of the helicopter above Fong and Culver collapsed more, as if something were crushing it from the outside. The roof over my head collapsed enough to hit my helmet. I ducked down and hustled the 2 steps to the door, peering out to see what was causing the damage. Before I could twist to look along the fuselage, I saw Carrington standing perfectly still about 10 yards from the helicopter. His pale face held patches of bright red as he stared down at his legs in terror. Movement to my right caught my eye, and I looked that way just in time to see Tirado being pulled into the forest floor by a gray root wrapped around his shoulder. He had his hands up, fingers scrabbling and grabbing other nearby roots for perches as he shouted for help. His voice went muffled as his head was pulled under the rich loam, but his arms were still visible, flailing wildly.
Help him!
I shouted at Carrington, who stood mere feet away. All the while, I was still aware the helicopter was collapsing. Thinking that was the bigger problem, I looked down the side of the fuselage, seeing a massive gray root squeezing the rear of the aircraft, which continued to crunch inward with the sound of rending metal and breaking glass. Another root to my left, over the cockpit, was doing the same. I brought my rifle up and aimed at the root, snaking up over the cockpit, sliding the safety off with my thumb. I fired once to see what it would do. A hole appeared in the root. A dark, syrupy sludge oozed out, but the root continued constricting. I fired again and again, but it only seemed to make the thing constrict faster.
Everyone get out!
I shouted, turning back and ducking through the slowly crumpling cockpit door.
Do what he says!
Fong called from behind me. The exodus began.
We gotta move you, buddy.
I said to the co-pilot.
My leg.
The ceiling collapsed more. Things were getting tight. He exhaled a shaky breath and nodded.
Fuck. Okay.
He reached down and gripped his leg on either side of the brake. I heard him grunt in pain at the touch. This wasn't going to be good. I let my rifle hang from its strap and grabbed him by the shirt with both hands.
Say when. Go!
He yanked on his leg, trying to pull it out from the vise it was caught in. I pulled on his shirt as well, yanking hard. No time to be gentle. He screamed, his lower leg folding in half toward us. Blood poured out of the nasty wound, and I thought I could hear bones snapping over the sound of metal crunching down. Then he was free, and I pulled him backward out of the cockpit, then dragged him outside. People were shouting outside, but I had no time to wonder why. I needed to get the co-pilot free of the wreckage. A root on the ground jostled his shattered leg as I pulled him away, causing him to scream even louder. I put him down as the two huge roots around the helicopter crushed their respective sections so small that they would have killed anyone left inside. In the tumult outside, one voice rose above the rest, and I realized it belonged to Carrington, the one who'd refused to move to help Torado. He was shouting for people to stay still, to stop moving. Leaving the co-pilot writhing on the ground amid the seemingly stationary roots, I turned to look at the shouting man. What I saw should have terrified me. It should have sent my heart racing and my throat constricting, but it didn't. Worse, a sense of giddy excitement arose in its place. Half my squad mates had roots wrapped around their legs. Fong and Culver were the nearest. Fong had a strange, gray root wrapped around each ankle, but Culver, who was unconscious or dead, had been left alone. Fong was bent over, trying to pry the roots off his ankles. It wasn't working. He was being pulled down, fighting the whole way.
Stop moving!
Carrington shouted.
Stop! They don't get you if you don't move!
I felt something on my right foot. When I looked down, I saw a root there, twisting up out of the loam like a blind snake, feeling its way up my boot. I froze, only turning my head to look at the co-pilot, who was now writhing even more violently because several roots were wrapped around him, dragging him slowly into the jungle floor.
Stop moving!
I hissed at him, but he was in too much pain and too panicked to pay any attention to me. I looked down at the root that had come up near my right foot and saw that it was no longer moving. It simply rested across my right boot. I knew that if I moved, it would too, and it would pull me under, just like Torado, just like the co-pilot. Most of my other squad mates had taken the advice and were now frozen in place. Some of them had roots snaking up to their waists, but since they weren't moving, they were safe. At least for the moment. But Fong was still fighting, his panic getting the better of him. He was going down quietly, though, with just a grunt here and there. He didn't ask for help, didn't even look toward any of us. It was as if he didn't even see us. Several people called for him to stop moving. Finally, when he was chest deep in the loam, he ceased all movement. It didn't help. He was pulled under, finally releasing a savage scream right before his head disappeared. Glancing up, I met Perkins's gaze. We shared a haunted look before his eyes shifted over to the co-pilot. I swallowed loudly, looking over as the co-pilot was dragged under, his cries first muffled and then completely drowned out by the dirt. A wave of anger crashed over me, and I found myself clenching my teeth, nearly vibrating with rage. An insane urge to laugh struck me, and I had to tamp it down with all my power. It made me think about my strange reaction to the helicopter crashing down. What's wrong with me? I thought. I had never reacted like that before. Why had I laughed in Perkins's face? Why had I welcomed death so readily then? Before I could search myself for answers, the radio in Lemus's hands came to life.
Stand by.
The voice from the other end said.
We're sending a couple of choppers. We have your location.
It was a funny choice of words, I thought. Stand by. That was literally all we could do if we didn't want to die a slow, horrible death. We had to stand by, perfectly still. So why did my legs suddenly want to move? Why did I want to jump up and down and shout and laugh? Do I really want to die? I asked myself. Branches grabbed at me as the helicopter rescue hoist lifted me through the trees. Before I broke through the canopy, I gazed down at the ground, which was now empty of all people. The transport copter we'd crashed in had been pulled all the way under about 10 minutes after Fong had. Maybe there was a point of no return for the strange roots, a point at which they simply continued pulling things or people down with them. I broke through the canopy and looked up at the belly of the rescue helicopter. The downdraft buffeted me, drying some of the sweat that had soaked my uniform during the long and painful wait for the chopper to arrive. Standing still for nearly an hour is much harder than you would think. It's only when you're forced to stay absolutely still that you realize just how much you actually move, and how important that movement is for comfort and normalcy. Now that Fong was gone, I was technically in charge of the squad. As a corporal, I was the next in the chain of command, but I hoped to God someone else would take the reins whenever we got where we were going. The hoist stopped me next to the helicopter's door, and I was pulled inside by one of the rescue crew. The rest of my squad sat in fold-down seats in the back of the aircraft. I shared looks with several of them as I got situated, and then we were nose down, flying toward the base where we'd been headed in the first place. We'd lost 6 people during and after the crash. The 2 pilots, Schuster, Tirado, Fong, and Culver, who regained consciousness shortly before the helicopter arrived. It was a miracle he was alive after getting skewered through the throat by that branch, but it didn't last long. He started moving immediately, looking around in a daze, asking what was wrong. Everyone tried to get him to stop moving, which wasn't much beyond telling him to be still. He didn't take our advice and was pulled under less than 2 minutes after he awoke. Now, the 6 of us sat in the back of the helicopter with the jungle canopy once again 100 feet below us. No one spoke for a long time. Then Manny Cantu jerked up from his seat and moved over to the squad in front of me.
What the fuck was that about back there? What are you talking about?
The words just came out, and I immediately regretted them. Everyone had seen my little breakdown. Everyone knew. I wasn't trying to ignore it, but I also didn't have a good answer for him.
Don't bullshit us, man.
Cantu said, gesturing at everyone else. I could feel all eyes on me.
What was that shit when the chopper was going down? You were laughing like a goddamn joker. What's wrong with you, Corporal?
The way Cantu said corporal made it clear what we were talking about. They couldn't depend on me to lead them if I was going to fall into hysterics every time our lives were in danger. I met Cantu's eyes and gathered myself for a moment.
I don't know what that was about. Something's wrong with me, but I'm not going to let it screw you guys up. I'll step down as corporal as soon as I can and recommend someone else. Who wants it?
The other 5 shared looks. Finally, Madrigal nodded.
I'll take it, if everyone's good with it.
There were murmurs of assent. I felt vindicated, because Madrigal was my first choice anyway. He had experience, he was tough as nails, and he cared about everyone in our squad. He was the obvious choice.
Congratulations,
I said.
You're now our acting corporal. We'll make it official as soon as we get to someone with rank.
Madrigal nodded once. Cantu studied my face for a long moment, and I knew what had to be done next.
Anyone think I can't do my duty as a grunt? If so, let me know now. I'll request a psych eval or a transfer.
Vera Lemus was the first to come to my defense.
He pulled the co-pilot out,
she said.
He was the only one of us who tried to shoot the roots, even if it didn't work. I say he stays.
Perkins, to my surprise, agreed.
Yeah, I say he stays too.
He paused, and a grin came over his face.
Besides, it was pretty funny. I went from thinking, holy shit, we're gonna die, to thinking, holy shit, Slaughter's gone crazy. At least it took my mind off the crash. That's not the point,
Cantu said.
We need to know we can depend on him in a stressful situation.
Perkins shrugged.
Like Lima said, once we landed, he seemed pretty calm and collected, and he did pull the co-pilot out.
Cantu and Madrigal exchanged a look. Then Madrigal turned to me and asked,
You good, Slaughter? If you're asking me whether I'll have one of those episodes again, I gotta be honest, I don't know. But I don't think I'll be a liability. That's all I can give you right now.
Madrigal shrugged.
Good enough for me.
With that, the discussion seemed closed. A few minutes later, we landed on a helicopter pad in a wide-open stretch of cleared-out jungle about 300 yards wide. There were several other helicopters parked nearby, and a couple of hastily assembled trailers like the kind you see at construction sites placed around the clearing. We were offloaded and ushered toward a guy with sergeant stripes who told us he was just our escort.
Escort to where?
Madrigal asked. The guy, Sergeant Greer, just pointed down at the ground and then walked away, gesturing for us to follow.
What the fuck does that mean?
Lemus asked. We soon found out. From the helipad, we walked to the edge of the clearing and into the shade of the jungle. I scanned the jungle floor for any sign of those strange roots, but I didn't see any of that color or texture. We walked down a trail until we came to a windowless, 2-story metal building which squatted under the trees, looking like some kind of pillbox without firing holes. Greer punched in a code at the metal door, which then slid open. 2 guards stood inside next to an elevator, like the kind you'd expect to find in a mine shaft. It was little more than a large platform with waist-high railings. We all got on. I looked through the metal grating that made up the elevator floor, looking at some kind of ancient-looking staircase going down into the darkness below us. Once we were all loaded on, Greer got the elevator moving. It went down into the earth, and soon we were descending next to the staircase I'd seen, which zigged back and forth along the wall to one side. The other walls were made of cut stone. Excited murmurs filled the elevator as we descended for nearly 10 minutes. Then, as the surrounding walls disappeared, we entered another world. The cavern that opened up around us was breathtakingly massive. The elevator continued its descent, steadied by guide poles. On 3 sides, there was nothing but empty space and a sheer drop. On the 4th side, we skimmed along the side of a building that had been built out of the ceiling of the cave, essentially hanging from the cave roof. The elevator came to a stop, and a door slid open to reveal a floor that looked much like every Foundation building I'd ever been in. A man I recognized stood there as if waiting for us. I glanced at the man, Lucas Falk, but another sight some distance away had caught our squad's attention, and I was no exception. I turned away from Falk and looked out the side of the elevator opposite the building. In the distance, a mile or 2 away, was an enormous upside-down tree. Like the building, it had its foundation in the ceiling, its roots apparently growing upward into the Earth's crust. The scale of the tree was dizzying. Even from this distance, I couldn't see its top, and not because of the dark. The tree was lit with huge floodlights placed on the cave's roof. What looked to be drones hovered around it, providing illumination to those places where the floodlights could not reach. The tree's leafless branches stretched out below us, and upon looking at them, I had no doubt that the roots we'd encountered topside belonged to this strange and massive tree. The trunk looked to be several hundred yards wide, although it was hard to tell with any certainty. I guessed the tree probably stretched more than a mile, maybe a lot more, down into the cave. Stepping up to the rail, I looked straight down and saw nothing but darkness below. There was no telling how deep this cavern was. It seemed impossible, even to someone who'd been working for the Foundation for years.
I know it's a lot to take in,
Falk said from behind us.
but time is of the essence. Please, come with me.
Even in our awe, we had all seen the stripes on Falk's uniform. So we all did as he said, walking off the elevator. Our escort, Greer, stayed on to go back up. Falk introduced himself as he guided us down the hall and into a briefing room. where he told us all to take a seat. He stood next to a large TV screen at the front of the room, while the rest of us sat in folding chairs facing him. Back in the day, Falk and I had been pretty good friends, but we hadn't seen each other in at least 2 years. He looked much older than I remembered, a risk of the job.
I'll cut right to the chase here, because there's a lot to cover and I know you all have questions. You're here on a rescue mission. Unfortunately, even though you've suffered losses and are probably exhausted, I have to send you down as soon as possible. Lives are at stake. Maybe lots of lives.
He paused, reading the room, seeing if anyone would object. But we were all soldiers, and we knew the drill. While the Foundation's culture wasn't quite like that of the military, it was close enough. If you griped, especially when fellow Foundation personnel were in danger, you were asking for an erased memory and a life pushing papers in some shitty office in some shitty corner of the world, away from all the action. No one objected. Falk picked up a tablet from a nearby table and worked quickly to get an image of the huge tree on the large TV next to him.
This tree is designated SCP-6666,
he said.
Its trunk is approximately 415 yards in diameter, and it's just over 5.5 miles in length. But you will not be going near the tree. You will be going to the bottom of the cavern into a long abandoned city that was once inhabited by a civilization we're still learning about. They were humanoid, but we're not sure if they came from the same stock as us, so to speak. Hell, they might have been us at some point. We're just not sure, and we'll let the wonks figure that out. We sent a small team down into the city 2 days ago to gather information and artifacts. We lost contact with them approximately 13 hours ago. Your job is to find them, or whatever remains of them, and bring any survivors and anything they've gathered back here.
Falk paused, and he made a point of meeting each of our eyes in turn. He looked at me last, and his gaze lingered on my face as he spoke these next few words.
I don't know how much time you'll have to get this done, but it isn't much. We'll keep the fog away as long as we can, but I can't guarantee you more than 6 hours. Wait, what fog?
Madrigal asked. Falk looked confused for a minute. Then he looked over his shoulder at the screen and shook his head.
I didn't tell you about the fog? No, sir.
With his free hand, Falk pinched the bridge of his nose and shut his eyes for a moment.
Sorry. Being down here for extended periods, it does something to you. I'm coming up on my rotation out of here soon. This is exactly why we brought your squad in. All our rescue squads have either been down here for too long or have their work cut out for them keeping the roots at bay up top.
Perkins and I shared a look. This was an awful lot of information, most of which wasn't making any sense.
Don't worry about any of that,
Falk said.
I'm just saying that no one has started to experience mental decay before 24 hours, so you won't have to worry about it. Mental decay? That sounds fucking great,
Cantu said.
It's temporary. Once you go topside, it fades. But we're getting off subject. Where was I? You were going to tell us about the fog, sir,
Madrigal said.
Right.
Falk worked the tablet, bringing up a paused video that showed a relative close-up of the side of the tree. He hit play, and the footage moved, showing a humanoid figure sticking out of a gash in the side of the tree's trunk. Given the size of the tree, I could tell that the figure was a giant. It was the same color as the tree itself, but whereas the tree trunk was covered in rough, textured bark, this giant figure looked more like its skin was smooth concrete. Its bald head featured no nose, no mouth, and 3 pairs of luminescent eyes that glowed pale blue even in the light from the drone or helicopter that had taken the footage. These eyes were stacked on each other vertically in 2 straight lines. It had 3 right arms of different sizes, with the top one being the largest. It held a massive sword in the largest hand, which it seemed to be using to try to free itself from its confines in the tree. The figure was sticking out of the gash in the tree at an angle, so only its right side was visible, and only down to its waist. The rest of its body, including its 3 left arms and its legs, if it had any, were inside the tree. A pale gray fog flowed out of the tree from around the creature and dropped straight down into the darkness below the tree's downward stretching branches. I found it odd that the creature was right side up while the tree was upside down, but it told me that gravity was the same for it as it was for us. At least, that was a good sign. A feeling like a couple of rats fighting erupted in my stomach as I looked at the creature on the screen. It wasn't fear. I knew fear. It was a strange flavor of excitement I had never experienced before. Not until today, anyway. Again, a strange urge to scream laughter bubbled up, and I had to work hard to keep it in check. Only after had I tamped it down did I think about how it might be better if I had just given in to that urge. Surely Falk wouldn't let me go down if I did that. Maybe this place was already getting to me. He'd said 24 hours, but maybe I was too sensitive to whatever was causing the mental decay he'd mentioned. The problem was, I wanted to go down. I wanted to go on this mission. I was excited about it. Perhaps more excited than I'd ever been before any mission. I felt like a kid about to go on a roller coaster for the first time, and I couldn't explain it. I felt like I was losing it, while also being absolutely sure of my abilities to save the people down there. Maybe it was dangerous overconfidence. Maybe, but I didn't think so. Movement on the screen brought me back. 2 helicopters approached the giant in the tree while it used its sword to try and pry the gash open more. It paid no mind to the 2 helicopters. Not at first, anyway. They were both cargo helicopters, both equipped with large cannons under the noses. The cannons had hoses trailing from them that snaked back into the cargo area. Once they were in position, they activated the cannons, which sprayed some kind of liquid that turned to foam as soon as it touched the tree or the figure. The enormous figure grew agitated as the foam solidified around it, eliminating what little freedom of movement it had. It tried to use its sword to hack away the foam, but the helicopter soon focused on freezing its arms to the tree. As the foam covered up more of the gash, the flow of fog slowed to a trickle. Finally, when every crevasse was sealed, the fog stopped completely. The giant could still move its head, which it did, whipping it around in frustration.
This footage was taken just over 48 hours ago,
Falk said.
In fact, the research team was already on their way down when this was taken. By the time they reached the bottom, the fog had dissipated enough for them to walk around in their hazmat suits.
You're saying that the stuff can get through hazmat suits?
Lemus asked. Falk nodded.
That's right. It's nasty stuff. And that foam will only hold for another 8 hours. After that, the fog will start flowing again. Why don't you just get more of that foam stuff?
I said.
We're trying. But, like your own flight in, we've been running into an inordinate amount of problems getting supplies and personnel here. The foam was set to arrive yesterday, but something happened to the ship in the mid-Atlantic. We're still not sure what. I've ordered another shipment, but it's not set to arrive until tomorrow at the earliest.
So what happens to us if we're down there when the fog starts going again?
Lemus asked.
Let's just say there are more pleasant ways to die, and getting your limbs pulled off by a team of horses is one of them. Damn, way to inspire confidence,
Cantu said.
Did you not send recon drones down there before the research team?
I asked. Falk nodded.
We did. We saw nothing that would indicate danger. The city is deserted as far as we can tell. So what happened to the team? We don't know. Their camera feeds went out shortly before we lost contact with them. We'll be putting you in at the prearranged rendezvous point and giving you a map of their last known coordinates. Hell, maybe they'll be at the rendezvous point,
Cantu said.
Wouldn't that be something? Doubtful. We've been sending drones down every 2 hours to check the rendezvous point. We've seen no sign of them, and the drones don't last long before they stop functioning. Now the drones are malfunctioning?
Cantu said.
How do you know we won't die once we step foot down there?
Falk gave him an exasperated look that said,
Do you really want me to answer that question?
But he spoke anyway, saying,
The drones haven't detected anything inherently hazardous before they go down. The malfunctioning drones,
Cantu said.
Right. Do you have any intel package ready for us?
I asked, still thinking like a corporal. I stopped myself and glanced at Madrigal, who glared at me.
Yes, Corporal. You'll have approximately 30 minutes to review it on your way down. Sir,
I said, standing up.
About that. I feel it is my duty to step down as corporal. I recommend Specialist Madrigal as my replacement.
Falk looked surprised, glancing from me to Madrigal.
Why do you feel it is your duty? I've been feeling a little odd, sir. A little odd? Do you have a head cold? A stomach bug? Do you think this odd feeling will interfere with your ability to do your job?
I hesitated.
No, sir. I'm not sick, and I think I can do my job. But my squad mates have. Is this true?
Falk swept his gaze across the room.
You would rather have Madrigal lead this mission?
A couple of half-hearted yeses came from my squad mates. Falk nodded.
Fine. Congratulations, Corporal Madrigal. Now follow me.
Without waiting, Falk walked out of the room and down the hall. We all fell in behind him, having no idea that it would be our last mission as a squad.
Holy God.
I said as I looked out the open door at the city whipping by underneath the helicopter. Most of the buildings were obscured by darkness, but the light from the aircraft skimmed over some, allowing us to glimpse their structures. They were all made of stone, and the windows all lacked glass, but they were far from crude. Some of the buildings stood 6 stories tall, while most were 2 or 3 stories. The brickwork was excellent, and no 2 buildings looked exactly alike. Whoever made this city took pride in their work. According to the map and the data package Falk sent us off with, the city was over 300 square miles. Surrounding the city was a dense forest with trees of a genus thus far unknown to man. We were going to be inserted just 3/4 of a mile from the edge of the forest. Apparently, the research team had been inserted there so they could take samples of both the city and the forest. But there was another reason they were put down at that particular spot. And as the helicopter slowed, we saw for ourselves. The city streets below, about as wide as the streets in your average downtown, were choked with mummified corpses. Thousands of them, identical to humans, as far as I could tell from the helicopter. It seemed the people had been fleeing the city, headed toward the woods, when they died. The aircraft slowed to a hover over what looked like a park, our landing zone. We shoved the ropes out, which unfurled and struck the carpet of bodies in the park below. The 6 of us slid down the ropes, 2 at a time. Perkins and Cantu went first, followed by me and Lemus. Finally, Madrigal and Carrington came down. Dressed in sealed suits as we were, breathing heavily filtered air, I couldn't smell the corpses. For that, I was thankful, although they were long past the point of putrescence. Their clothes were little more than dark, petrified tatters, and their flesh looked like strips of jerky stretched over bony protrusions. I could see no obvious wounds on them, and I knew from the data package that the working hypothesis was that the toxic fog from the tree had swept down and wiped out the entire civilization. There was no evidence that they had mastered flight, so they wouldn't have been able to get up to the tree without climbing the sides of the dizzyingly large cavern, which seemed unlikely. The only differences I could see between them and us were their huge eye sockets and their slightly larger and more bulbous skulls. Their eyeballs had long since dried up to nothing, but I figured their eyes were large because they lived in the dark. There was no natural source of light in the cavern. Maybe there had been, but if so, it was long gone now. With gigantic eyes, they would be well suited to live in the darkness. As for us, we all had night vision capabilities built into our helmets. Everything showed up in greens, blacks, and washed out whites as I looked around. Overhead, the helicopter lifted off. I peered up toward the tree, seeing the gray-green mass of its branches high overhead. It was disorienting, looking at the tree as if from the top. I smiled in my helmet, wanting to giggle and still not knowing why.
We've got 4 hours and 53 minutes.
Madrigal said over the shared comms channel.
Let's move.
Perkins took point as we hustled through the park, brittle bones crunching under our boots. We moved warily, rifles up and trigger fingers pressed to the housing, ready for action. There were 3 city blocks between us and the forest. Somewhere in those blocks was where the research team had last made contact. We didn't have time to go building by building, but we did have some technological help. As soon as we reached the edge of the park, me, Lemus, and Carrington took up defensive positions, while Perkins and Cantu swung their packs off and retrieved their automated drones. They powered the small objects on, 2 each, and then sent them on their way. They zoomed away, heading to search the buildings they'd been assigned, red lights blinking ghostly green in my night vision goggles. We stayed where we were at the corner of a 2-story building, hoping the drones wouldn't malfunction like the other ones Falk had sent down earlier. Perkins and Cantu crouched, watching the screens projected into their heads-up displays to see if the drones found any evidence of the team. Minutes ticked by with minimal talking. It seemed from their silence that the mass grave we were walking around in had put everyone on edge. Well, everyone but me. I still wasn't scared. Excited and giddy, yes, but not scared. I recalled what Falk had said to me right before I boarded the helicopter back at the base. He'd pulled me aside while the others loaded up.
I don't know what's going on with you, but I need you down there with them,
Falk told me.
I requested your squad for a reason.
I met Falk's eyes, wondering why. Sure, we'd been friends, but we'd never been that close. I was a decent soldier, but there were plenty better. Even among my squad, there were better tacticians, better marksmen. I guess the bemused look I gave him said it all.
Don't ask me why,
Falk said,
but I've had some dreams about you since being here. You're supposed to be here. Just stay frosty.
And that was it. I nodded and hustled to the helicopter, thinking Falk had lost it. He needed to get topside sooner than later, because his mental decay was getting the better of him. Now, as I blinked in complacency, I could hardly form a coherent thought.
I've got something,
Cantu said.
Survivors! Let's move.
Madrigal said. We moved, stopping at a 3-story building bordering the forest. I couldn't help but look into the tall trees, smiling as though the forest was grinning back at me.
Slaughter!
Madrigal snapped.
Form up.
Realizing I was out of formation, I did as he said, and we made entry into the building. We rushed to the 2nd floor of the stone building and burst into a room where 3 people in suits, just like ours, stood near one corner, facing away from us, swaying slightly. We stopped a safe distance away, pointing our weapons at them just in case.
Hello?
Madrigal said.
Can you hear me?
We were supposed to be on the same channel as the research team, but these 3 made no indication that they heard us. Madrigal gestured at Cantu, who moved toward the nearest figure and reached a hesitant hand out. He grabbed the figure and spun it around to face us, then recoiled at what he saw in the helmet. At first, I wasn't sure what I was seeing. The visor was broken, a jagged hole in the reinforced plastic. The first sign something was really wrong. The person in the suit had wounds on their face, but that wasn't all. The eyes were different colors, and the nose was disfigured. Then I realized what it was, finding it comical in a sick way. The person's face was made up of 2 different people. A single, barely bloody wound went directly down the middle of their face. The left side belonged to a woman, the right side to a man, as though each person had been cut in half, and 2 of their halves had been mashed into each other. They stared at Cantu with hazy eyes. Then those eyes went wide, and the wound down the middle of the head opened like a mouth. Huge spiders shot out of the split-open head, flying through the hole in the visor and crashing into Cantu's helmet. The other 2 figures spun around, revealing that both visors were broken. There was only darkness in one suit, a darkness so complete it just seemed wrong. The other one contained a swirling mass of giant, writhing worms. Cantu screamed while the first figure rode him to the floor. As he went down, I remembered something about him suffering from arachnophobia. He was scared of spiders. My squad mates fired their rifles. I stood there, just watching. A big, stupid grin crawling onto my face as the huge fanged spiders broke through Cantu's visor and crawled into his suit while he screamed. A moment later, Cantu's body exploded in his suit, a torrent of gore shooting from his broken visor to splatter the ceiling and much of the room. Bullets did nothing to the other two figures, who lurched forward in lightning-quick blurs. The suit full of darkness took Madrigal to the floor. The darkness poured from the broken visor into Madrigal's helmet, erasing the man, replacing him with utter blackness in a matter of moments. Somehow, his scream lingered, fading slowly as if he were falling down an immense pit. Finger-thick worms shot out of the other suit and attacked Perkins. They broke through his visor as though it was made of tissue paper and then snaked into his body through his mouth and nose, glistening pinkish bodies undulating sickeningly as they invaded him. Perkins dropped his gun and thrashed at his face with gloved hands, trying to scratch the worms out of him. But moments after they went in, his eyeballs bulged and then disintegrated as the worms ate through them. Lima said, grabbing me and yanking me out of the room. As she pulled me into the hallway, I saw Carrington open fire on other figures in suits who had appeared in the other room. They came forward, unaffected by the gunshots.
Just run!
Lima shouted over the channel. But Carrington didn't run, and he was soon overtaken. Lemus pulled me down and out of the building. I didn't put up a fight. My legs kept churning, and I smiled as if I knew this was all a dream. My dream. At first, we turned to go back the way we came, but we stopped when we saw the carpet of corpses getting to their feet. We turned left, but soon the corpses in that direction started to rise. I already knew, somehow, that we would be going into the forest, that we were supposed to go that way. So we switched, and I pulled Lemus into the forest, down a path that was lined with bodies for a good 40 yards. These corpses didn't stir until we were past them, at which point they rose and stumbled after us. We soon left them behind, and we kept running. We ran until a familiar voice came over the comms channel, a voice from high above.
Slaughter, are you there?
Falk asked. Still catching my breath, I knelt behind a fallen tree with strange, spiky branches. Lemus knelt next to me, looking through her visor at the path we'd just been on, aiming her rifle. I was still locked in a struggle with myself, feeling like I was drugged or drunk and trying my best to sober up. I knew logically that we were in trouble, but I couldn't manage to feel fear. I couldn't feel much of anything besides an exciting sense of purpose.
Slaughter?
Falk asked again. He sounded strange, like he was half asleep.
I'm here,
I said, my voice sounding oddly cheery.
Was my dream right?
He asked.
Do you know what to do?
I actually laughed, although it wasn't the crazed giggle I had been fighting.
I don't have a clue.
Everyone's lost it up here.
Falk said.
People are killing themselves and each other. The helicopters are all gone, and I don't know where they went. Saw one of them crash into the tree, but I can't locate the other ones. I think we're pretty much done.
Done with what?
We weren't supposed to come down here. I can see that now.
Falk paused, and I could hear strange noises in the background, banging and whimpering and sobbing.
I thought it was just a weird dream at first. Maybe that's all it was. But I hoped I was wrong. That's why I requested your squad. I thought I was doing the right thing.
Are you saying we won't have a ride out of here?
Lemus asked, cutting off Falk's incoherent rambling. Falk paused, and for a moment I thought we'd lost our connection. Then his scream ripped over the channel. I couldn't help my reaction. I knew logically that I should be concerned about what was happening, but I wasn't. A laugh bubbled up my throat and escaped my mouth before I could stop it.
You're fucking crazy!
Lemus shouted over the radio.
Both of you!
A flash of red light came from down the trail, catching our attention. My laugh died down as I looked that way, seeing one of our squad mates walking down the trail, two bright red eyes visible in the otherwise pitch-black helmet. Lemus gasped and lurched away, pulling me along. With each step we took, heading farther into the trees, I experienced an increase in my nihilistic joy, like I was going towards something of no importance, which made it somehow vitally important. My thoughts were a confused jumble, but I didn't fight them. I just let them be thoughts, feeling strangely invincible because they couldn't touch me. Not the real me, the observer who watched and witnessed everything. That part of me was where the laughter came from. That I knew with implacable certainty. I allowed myself to be pulled down the trail, feeling the burn of my leg muscles as they worked, just as they'd been designed. Then we were slowing, and I saw why. We'd come into a clearing where several more of the odd humanoid bodies lay near a brick structure built into the ground. It looked like the entrance to some sort of bunker. "In there," I said, knowing that we had to get into it.
We don't know what's in there.
Lemus said.
It looks like all these people were trying to reach it. Whatever is down there, it must be important. At the very least, it should be defensible.
I sounded like the most reasonable person as I spoke, and I knew it was having an effect on Lemus.
Falk,
She asked.
you copy?
At some point, Falk's scream had died down. We hadn't heard a peep from him since. He gave no answer to Lemus's inquiry. That red light splashed across us again, and we both turned to see the red-eyed thing coming toward us, wearing what looked like to be Madrigal's suit. Without another word, Lemus let go of me and ran to the stone structure in the ground. I followed her, moving down the spiral staircase a couple of steps behind her. We left the forest floor behind and ventured far down into the earth, going around and around the spiral staircase, our night vision goggles allowing us to see. Finally, we came to a large wooden door that looked like it belonged on some medieval castle. Symbols that looked like Sanskrit and Cyrillic combined adorned the door. We had no idea what they meant, and we went headlong through the door. Inside, I stopped, only able to see Lemus next to me.
I can't see anything.
She said.
My goggles are malfunctioning.
Can you see me?
I asked, knowing the answer already. I could see her, but everything else was pure black, the absence of anything.
Yes, but where did the door go?
I turned around and wasn't surprised to see that the door was gone, along with the staircase. We stood in nothing, an endless expanse of nothing. A smile tugged at my lips, but Lemus was starting to hyperventilate.
Where are we?
She asked, voice tight with burgeoning fear.
It's okay.
I said calmly.
We're okay.
There's nothing here. Nothing. How the fuck are we going to get back? What?
Lemus's fear-induced word vomit stopped as the surrounding darkness morphed. We were suddenly surrounded by a wall made of demented, deformed clowns. They crawled all over each other, looking like melting and reforming wax as their bodies melded and separated. Some of them had sharp, bloody teeth, while others had mouths full of rot, maggots, and other insects writhing amid their snaggle teeth. Their fingers were overly long, their nails thick and black and sharp. Their eyes, some of them blood red, some black, and some pure white, were always fixed on Lemus, no matter where they were on the circular wall that surrounded us. Their heads twisted so their gazes could remain fixed on her, bones crunching and grease paint-covered flesh distorting. I knew Lemus had a fear of clowns. The entire squad knew. Suddenly, everything that had happened since we'd come down here made some kind of sense. Next to me, Lemus had gone from hyperventilating to not breathing at all. All I could hear over the open channel was a squeak that came from somewhere deep in her throat.
It's okay.
I whispered, but my words were drowned out by Lemus's composure snapping, a scream ripping out of her throat, driven by furious emotion. A massive clown coalesced out of the wall, scuttling up to Lemus on too many limbs, eyes turning into mouths with teeth that clacked together loudly. I raised my rifle and fired at the clown, even though I knew it would do no good. Nothing happened. The bullets went right through the thing. Then it was on top of Lemus, who was screaming even louder now. It broke through her visor with a headbutt, then positioned its head over hers. From out of all three of its mouths came torrents of multicolored vomit, splashing all over Lemus's face. Maggots and slugs and tiny cockroaches scurried over her face, disappearing into her screaming mouth and up her nose. Once the three mouths were done vomiting, they laughed insanely. I wondered if that was what my laugh sounded like when I lost control. The vomit started sizzling on Lemus's skin, and only a moment later, her face collapsed, flesh and bone melting away. The clown looked up at me with its mouth eyes, teeth clacking together for a moment. I looked back, disgusted, sorry for Lemus's death, but not afraid. The clowns disappeared as quickly as they'd appeared. I was left in utter darkness again. Even so, I could feel something prodding at my mind, trying to find out what I was scared of. It found nothing, because my fear had been erased. The darkness around me changed again, and I was no longer alone. There was another being with me, although to say I could see it wouldn't be exactly right. I knew on some primitive level that this being wasn't something I could see in any literal way. But in order for my mind to make sense of it, as much sense as I was capable of anyway, some automatic process created an image that I used as a stand-in, lest I go insane trying to comprehend the thing there with me. It was a vast and beastly thing, a creature made of nothing but staring eyeballs and mouths stretched in silent screams. Despite the fact that this amalgam of images wasn't exactly the thing's body, I still couldn't meet its gaze. I felt myself teetering on the edge of madness. I looked away, keeping it only in my peripheral vision. But when it spoke, there was nothing I could do but fall to my knees in pain. I slammed my hands to my ears and felt the blood pooling against my palms. Still, I felt no fear, only pain and a sense of wrongness as my mind struggled to comprehend something it had no chance of understanding. Although the creature spoke no language, surely it didn't speak at all, not in any way definable by human intellect. It somehow managed to use its immense power to impart its communication to me. It told me I had passed the test and that it would put off eating my universe until the next test, when the Fearless One would have to come again. It also explained that the giant in the tree that had spread the poison was trapped in our world and wanted the freedom of death. He'd been made immortal as a punishment, but if he could prevent the Fearless One from coming for the test, he could wipe out the universe and finally experience death. The beast told me, in its way, of the forces at work to preserve my universe. Forces that had given Falk his dreams, which had brought me here, just where I needed to be. It seemed like a game to the beast, like a chess match with some other incomprehensible cosmic being. It moved on, showing me other things, giving me other bits of knowledge. I glimpsed the humanoid that had made it down just before the position swept over the city about 200 years ago. The Fearless One, the one before me. It wasn't in her species' nature to be fearless. Fear can be a very useful tool. No, she wasn't born fearless, and she didn't achieve some kind of meditative state to overcome her fear. She was like me. She had a brain tumor that shut down the chemical processes responsible for fear in her brain, just like me. Of course, I had no idea I had a brain tumor before stepping into the presence of the vast creature I now stood before. It told me that. It learned of it while poking and prodding my mind. I thought it was a technicality, but I wasn't about to argue with the thing. Not when my entire universe was at stake. As the creature disappeared and I found myself standing in an empty room, I found that I still had no fear of dying. I turned around and walked out of the room, trudging back up the stairs, thinking about the news I'd just gotten. A brain tumor. How long had these people been living down here, sacrificing themselves to keep that insanity-inducing beast from swallowing our universe? I had no idea. It hadn't shown me that. But I figured the Foundation would get to the bottom of it. About halfway up the stairs, Falk's voice came over the radio.
Slaughter, are you there? Do you copy? His vitals are steady. Says he's alive. I don't get why he's not.
I'm here.
I said.
What the hell happened?
You all feeling better up there?
We're okay. Most of us anyway. What did you do? How did you stop it?
I'll tell you when I get back up there.
There was only the sound of Falk breathing for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with sorrow.
Well, that's the thing, Slaughter. The foam is failing. The fog is flowing down there as we speak. And we don't have any birds to come get you.
The smile came to my face after the second sentence, and as he finished, I started laughing. And I kept laughing, all the way to my grave. SCP-6666 is a colossal, botanical entity located in the Amazon rainforest, consisting of a wide trunk and many thousands of arching branches reaching away from the center mass like a tree, though it does not closely resemble any known species of similar biological structures. The entity is inverted, suspended by its considerable root system from the top of a massive lithospheric void in the crust of the Earth. This space appears to have formed naturally between 450 and 560 million years ago. Despite the fact that SCP-6666 is biologically inert, sections of new growth are mobile and hostile. Roots that appear above ground will attempt to pull anything nearby them, man, animal, machine, or otherwise, into the cavern below through the soil. This effect can be temporarily mitigated by ceasing movement entirely. To hear more stories like this, be sure to hit subscribe and turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next one.